Objective you were to take?
Well, the machine gun squad, we were the rightmost amphibious tractor group. In fact, we passed right by the command and control vessel, and we were taking a lot of pictures, and I'm quite sure one of the pictures I've seen many times.
Keep the mic up to your mouth.
Anyway,
Mike, things.
Finally got to shore. Excuse me. Yeah, we got to shore. First of all, the amphibious tanks preceded us, and there was an angle that we were at, and those amphibious tank, they couldn't see anything to shoot at, so they backed off into the water. Our tractor, we were far enough on the beach that we didn't get our feet wet. And since I had manned the 30 caliber machine gun, which we didn't have to fire at all because there was no opposition to our coming to the beach at all, and I was the last man off that amphibious tractor. And I watched everybody else get off the beach because that's what we were told. Don't stay on the beach, get off the beach. And I leaned down, and the first thing I did was say the 23rd Psalm. I wanted to make sure the good Lord was with me. And then I looked up the beach to my right. There's an airplane coming down the beach. And I thought, sure, well, that's the Japanese. They're going to strafe us. Well, it was a Navy observation plane. And he was maybe 50 feet off the deck. And all of a sudden, one of those dual-purpose Jap guns opened up on him. And as he went by me, the pilot was slumped over the controls, and the observer was facing me. And a look of terror. Now, whenever that's been in my mind forever, the looks of that person. And all of a sudden the plane veered off and crashed into the ocean. And I don't know whether I was in the 28th Marine Division section or not, but after that happened, then I started forward. And I was carrying about, well, there were 3 canisters of ammunition, one in each hand and then one in our packs, plus we had 3 days supply of K rations. Supposedly the operation on Iwo Jima was to last 72 hours. Intelligence apparently thought there might be 5,000 Japs on the island. Well, the Japs were not on the island, they were in the island with all their tunnels. It all ended up that there were over 20,000, maybe 21,000 Japanese on 8 square miles. Well, the man I was following was wounded. And I asked him, where are the rest of the squad? He said, I haven't seen anybody since leaving the tractor. And so more or less I was on my own. I knew we had to be up by the end of the airfield. And so I would probably run along maybe 20, 30 yards, and because of the sand, you'd get so tired, you'd get down there and hope, get enough nerve up to come out of that depression and start out again. And eventually up close to that airfield, I was down in a drainage ditch. And crawling along, and all of a sudden here's a wire stretched across that ditch. And you know very well that was a booby trap. And I was one of these on-the-job training people. I had never been told what to do if you came across a stretched wire, but I knew it was something that was pretty dangerous. Eventually a sergeant came along and he said, back up from there and get up here and we'll go up on the airfield, which I did. And I've often wondered who may have been killed by that booby trap eventually. I should have had a cloth or something to put there. But again, got up on the airfield, and immediately we were bracketed by either mortar fire or artillery fire, because you know every square meter of that Iwo Jima was zero. And I began to ask if they knew where the machine gun squad of B-127 was. Well, they were to the right, not too far, and there was a concrete sort of a culvert that the Japanese used bombing and that thing to get in. It was quite safe. And I was busy then cleaning my rifle. It was all sand. And I put that back together, and then a bunch of Japanese ran across with a bunch of wrecked planes, and everybody got up and started shooting. And you know what that brought on? More mortar fire. Well, later on in the afternoon, we were relieved because we had just a machine gun squad. We'd lost 1 man killed and 2 wounded out of 8. And so we were relieved. We went down off the airfield, and what do you suppose we found? The media was there. We couldn't believe how they get up there. Remember that, Jack? Well, we tried to get around that end of the airfield, and we tried, I think, 3 times. They would stop us by the mortar fire, but by maybe 6 o'clock in the evening like that, we finally got around the other side, and we dug in foxholes, and being curious, we went up to look at some of those wrecked Jap planes. We weren't up there very long, and pretty soon snipers got busy. And our squad leader, who had, by the way, most of our non-commissioned officers had been seen combat before. Many of them were former Marine paratroopers. And that was a very fortunate thing, because they knew what combat was all about. I said, well, what in the world is that sound? He said, well, that's sniper fire. He said, that's just like a bunch of flies or nuisance. Well, on the 28th of February, he was killed by a sniper right between the eyes. That became a terrible thing. Snipers, sometimes you couldn't move at all because of snipers, and the other weapon was knee mortars. And it was something you just get a foxhole, you'd start thinking deeper. That's Jack and I sometimes would wake up and we'd start thinking a foxhole deeper, thinking it's going to or I guess. Okay, what's next?
Okay, just tell us briefly then about you getting wounded and taken off the island when you had your wound, when you got your Purple Heart. Wounded, when you were wounded and taken off the island.
Oh, I want to say something before when I got wounded. Maybe I know that members of D Company and C Company know something about Hill 360. That was the center defensive line, part of the defensive line to the Japanese. And we attacked that elevation on the 28th of February. And we made it over a plateau, which when we went there, I thought, man, this is just like the beach on Iwo. Fortunately, the Japanese had gone underground because the artillery had just, I don't know how many rounds they fired up there, but the Japanese were still underground when we got up on top of that Hill 362A, and almost immediately a Nambu opened up. And our squad leader sent our assistant gunner with tripod up forward and immediately hit with Nambu fire and died. Well, I don't think he died immediately because a corpsman went up to give him morphine and actually got sick to his stomach. Although that corpsman had treated I don't know how many Marines. Well, later, about in the year 2007, when I was a freshman in college, I had taught my English teacher into writing a story about my experiences on Iwo Jima. And that story now is on Google. And all you have to do is type in James M. Martin Jr. USMC and you'll come down and it'll say Jim Martin Homefront. And you will find some pictures and that 11-page or so story about my experiences. Well, the daughter of the Marine that was killed up there on Hill 362A, a friend of hers read that article and told her that her father had been mentioned in there. And she made arrangements through some sort of public television to contact me, which then I could contact her. The only news that her mother ever received about the death of her father was a telegram from the Navy.
Oh, man.
And that's all that family knew. She was 5 years old when her father died. So it was 60-some years before she ever knew how her father died. And I related the story about that, and then she also received that 11-page. That, I mean, she was so thankful that finally somebody could tell her about that, why our father was killed.